Hi there. Thanks for joining us again on Celebrating Act Two. As you can see, Art and I are with the virtual gourmet himself, John Mariani. John,
Yes,
welcome.
thank you. I'm just spinning in my chair. Yes, just spinning. Worry about the global drop in wine and booze sales. Just spinning.
Oh,
You
oh,
are you are a man of so many talents.
Okay.
Speaking of which, we've had a lot of conversations about wines from different parts of the world, principally European wines that you've tasted and you opine upon, and even California. But with this recent burst of talk about tariffs and things like that, our neighbors to the north in Canada, in many cases, have pulled all American whiskey off the shelf. And it's been a knee jerk reaction. We don't need to discuss the politics of it so much, other than it's happening certainly in Canada. Has there been a similar thing in other parts of the world that you've noticed?
The Europeans, the Australians, the South Africans, and the South Americans are biding their time, hoping, saying novenas that it's not going to happen. This is a big, big threat of Trump, but I think it will happen. There's no question. I'm not going to opine on Trump's motives, but it's just not a very good idea to trade war like this. And they are terrified, especially champagne. I mean, imagine if you have been drinking a $50 champagne to celebrate whatever, just the weekend, much less $300 champagnes, and there's a 200% tariff on there. That means that $50 champagne is now $150, which is what a prestige cuvee would have cost you before. And the $300 champagne is going to cost you $900. And that single bottle at the restaurant hikes is going to be $1,800. I mean, it's going to be impossible. Aside from that, and aside from the tariffs, which is going to cripple everything and everybody. You may remember some years ago, for one reason or another, we were mad at the French because they didn't go into Iraq or something, and some moron retailer in New York started pouring. A retailer of wines, a wine shop, started to pour his Bordeaux and Burgundy wines into the street, having already paid for those wines. I mean, he wasn't hurting anybody. He'd already paid the French for the wines. So it's not the smartest thing in the world to do. This is also in face of a decrease in global wine sales for a number of reasons. Because although the total amount in terms of money that is being spent on wine is not because people are drinking more, but because the stuff is getting more expensive for all sorts of reasons that are perhaps another. But young people specifically, Gen Z, are we into Gen Z now? I think we are. Gen X, they were drinkers of wine, and they were experimenting and drinking all kinds of wines in California and Argentina and so forth. But Gen Z, all around the world, seems to have lost an interest in getting with it. I mean, Coleman and I can speak that in when we were in high school with our absolutely bona fide ID of our age, we drank beer and seven and so forth. Nobody drank wine. I mean, we
yeah.
were not a wine drinking generation at all. And then as the 70s came, Americans, especially more sophisticated ones, wine drinking became a thing one does. Well, for whatever reason, that's fallen off. And in Italy, they're drinking less wine, more beer, the young people. In France, they're drinking more beer and less wine. And the British, who always have drunk a lot more beer than they have wine, have been cutting back. Some of it is due to reports that wine is not as good for you as we once thought it was. The scientists who said drink a couple of glasses of red wine is better for your heart. Studies show that people live longer. There have been recent reports, and these are going to go up and down for
Sure,
years.
sure.
But for the moment, don't do it very much or at all. I mean, see, that's the thing is that some of these studies say we don't know. Perhaps one single glass is having an effect on your health. Whereas last year they're saying one single glass is very good for your health. So So people are, I would think in that case, not the young people, but the middle age and older people don't know where to turn, and so they say, "Well, I'll have one glass instead of two a night." So the whole industry, global industry, is fighting not only that, but that there's so much more wine out there. I mean, 30 years ago, you never heard of wines coming in from South America. You never heard of wines coming in from South Africa. Uh,
Sure.
was there for a long time. We didn't import wines from South Africa because of apartheid, but now you can buy them. They're experimenting, well, more than experimenting. They're making wines in the UK now. I'm going to Croatia this week, and they have a booming wine industry, and I'm going to having a big wine festival there. I will visit this coming weekend, and probably the talk is going to be about the tariffs and how are we going to get our wines out of Croatia if people are drinking fewer wines. They don't know our wines. Why should they try our wines? And the answer has to be, well, they better be very cheap. But if they're very cheap, then people are going to think of them as very cheap wines. So we have to price them at a level where they sell $30, $40, $50 Croatian wines. That's a tough sell at this point in time. I interviewed a fellow who was a consultant to the wine industry, and he showed these graphs which money sales are up, profits way down, and then sales per se are down. And his advice is that we have erred in not making wine a beverage as opposed to making it something special, something winkingly sexy and romantic and saved for a special occasion. Back in the old days when people drank wine out of a brown bag, they sold a lot of those kinds of wines. But other beverages, he says, that it should be considered a healthful beverage. It should be considered something that you drink on an everyday basis. And he says we've got to get the influencers. He said, rightly or wrongly, influencers do have influence. So we have to get them online. We have to do marketing online because no winery, very few wineries, have anything like the monetary resources to advertise on television, which was forbidden up until very recently. Booze and wine, beer you could sell, but now you can sell wine, advertise wine, but that's very expensive. And most wineries don't have anything like those kinds of resources. I remember, again, John, when we were growing up, there was a French wine called Chateau Martin wine. I'm crazy about the Chateau Martin wine, and I don't know where it was made or anything. And but it was plonk, you know. And then in the 1960s, they came out with the wines from Bola. Very romantic again, very romantic. I am Signor Bola, and look, I have a white suit and a white beard and a 21-year-old daughter who would love to drink wine with you. And they were very good, and there were the three of them. There was Suave, Bardolino, and I forget what the third, Valpolicella. They did very well, but those were local ads, very much placed in New York, in DC, in Boston. That is beyond. So this consultant says the only way you're going to do it is to go full force on social media and get the word out there. And one thing the Germans did several years ago was to stop printing it in German print, because nobody understand what is that geschwätzte die Hütchen. And you couldn't read the labels because it was a German Gothic script. So yeah, things are changing, but I don't see, honestly, with more and more wine coming out, I don't see wines increasing in any particular segment. At the top of the line, there are those who can afford anything. But again, a guy who's saying, "Oh, we drink Prestige Cuvée at home, $300 of $300 bottles of Krug Special Reserve." Well, yeah, I can afford $300. Are you really going to put out $1,800 for that bottle? Very few people could do that.
Well, John, as I understand it, because of a glut in wine and less sales, does that mean we're going to be able to buy finer wine at a better price? Forget the tariff stuff. I think that's a temporary international
Yes.
hubbub, But overall, Can we go to our local store or local wine shop and buy a better wine?
Yes, absolutely, positively. Everybody realizes this. So wines are already discounted in wine stores all the time, except for the most expensive. And the most expensive are generally the rarest. They don't make very much of it. And some of them are on allocation, and others are you can only buy either at the winery or by subscription. So they'll be okay. Um, when the tariffs are not going to kill all that off. But yes, everybody is trying to give a better product for a cheaper price. But bottles, shipping, transportation, those things be factored in.
Sure, sure. Well, this is quite frankly, I see this as the story of any industry. There's ups and downs, there's overproduction, there's underproduction, there's tariffs, there's who knows what, there's, and particularly an industry that's essentially agricultural. We haven't even talked about weather patterns and how that affects the output.
Although we did talk about how now England is producing wines because of the warming climates there, and so on and so forth. But I think that what you've revealed to me, which I hadn't thought about it in just those terms, is that wine consumption is coming down anyway, in general, so that the tariffs, for whatever period of time they might be there, are certainly not going to be helpful. Probably will drive people to get domestic wines. But the backlash in countries other than Canada, which took it really as a personal offense, I think, more than anything, will probably happen throughout Europe and the rest of the world as well. You put a tariff on our liquors, our spirits, the hell with you, we're going to get rid of your stuff. So there could be a long-term effect for U.S. domestic production overseas, but I guess we'll have to wait and see.
What John says about every industry has its ups and downs. Yes and no. I mean, we don't sell a lot of bows and arrows anymore as we once did because the trend was away from coal. I mean, who is crazy enough to open a coal mine today? That's over. For years, less and less. So not every industry says, "Yeah, just ride this out." I'm not sure. Talk to me in 5 years and we'll see. I'm still drinking.
You know what? Let's mark that down on our calendar right now. John, Coleman, you're the one who takes care of our scheduling. Would you book Mariani in for 5 years from today?
That's right. Yes.
Well, all I can say is I remember an era when the only time you would see advertising for, and it was only champagne, would be at the holidays, just before Christmas.
Right.
Of course, I also remember Boone's Farm, and we won't get into that.
Yeah.
John, thank you for your perspective. This is great to have an overview of wine industry from somebody who travels the world and obviously knows his wine. Thank you.
Thank you.
For more on Celebrating Act Two, visit our webpage, follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and tell your friends. Celebrating Act Two is the user manual for the second half of your life.